we have these multiple concepts that are mapped on somewhat different points in the NLP language and theory map. If you could imagine NLP kind of like one of those old maps of the world from like the 16th century that had some rough approximations of what was going on the periphery and some closer approximations of what was going on at the center. So we've had, on various points on that NLP map, we have had concepts of integration and integrating, and that could be in the instant, in the moment, integration as parts of oneself. Are these conscious parts or unconscious parts? Or are these contextual selves that sort of emerge and then disappear as the context is changed? So we could say, yes, okay, we may have selves, multitudes of selves, potential selves that are only enacted selves or brought to life in the moment selves in certain contexts or frameworks. And everybody's going to have a little different self for every context. It's probably very, very unwise to be one unnuanced, undifferentiated, continuously, totally integrated self. Wouldn't work very well in life, because different contexts do demand different contextual responses. And these can be dramatically different contextual responses. On the other hand, problems do arise when you have psychic splittings take place where different subselves or different contextual reactions are so unknown or so walled off or so hidden by amnesias to each other that one part is not really even aware of the existence or the impact or the significance of another part, or has a very disconnected relationship with multiple parts. And that's where work of parts integration comes into play. So we are bringing together and putting into communication parts or perceptions or views of the world that may have been previously, for various reasons, broken into separate regions or separate countries that have various treaties with each other. What will be mentioned, what won't be mentioned, what will be observed in this country will not be observed in that country. We do get these issues of disintegration. And I think these become very significant concerns when we're talking about major personality integrations and disintegrations that produce what we might refer to as the deeply split personalities, or personalities where there are deeply split agendas, where one self is presenting one set of values and makes the appearance of adhering to or believing in one value system, and another part inexplicably and mysteriously adheres to a very different set of values and has a completely different, sometimes diametrically opposed worldview. So we would say that when the parts that represent potential selves, our array of potential selves include potential selves who are deeply discordant to the point where they really belong to different cultures, you might say, or have different entire perspectives on living, or entirely different modes and beliefs about self-other relationships and self-self relationships. We're talking about personalities with a degree of disintegration. Greek, of course, used the term symbolion to be thrown together or put together as symbol, and so Jung's symbolic psychology thought a lot about symbolion, the putting together, and a symbol, like a religious symbol, representing the fullest potential integration of the personality. And dia, across or away from, bolion, to throw apart or to split apart, became the root for diabolical, diabolian, to break apart, to break into separate, non-communicating, non-integrating parts of the self. So the symbolic is the bringing together into the whole. The diabolic is the breaking apart into scattered pieces and shards. And therein lies the work of great leaders, religious visionaries, great therapists, the re-symbolizing, or the idea of religion, re ligare, from to bind, okay, the verb to bind, ligare, re-ligare, to bind again, to bring again into a bound, unified whole. And so there is one, you might say, evolved idea of a religious practice as one that rebinds the self into a coherent whole. And I suppose that there, you could say, there are practices that would be deligion, to deligare, to unbind, to break apart, to scatter to the winds, which we find in damaged and traumatized cultures. So this also becomes one of the great conceptual underpinnings and foundational pieces of consciousness and awareness that supports and informs what we believe about coherence, what we believe about congruity, and what we believe about ecology. People are asking, some people are, in intelligent ways, asking, well, what do we mean by ecology? And I think ecology, at its most basic area of its exploration, is the study of the necessary pulsation and the necessary pattern of integrations and disintegrations, and the degree to which we permit, a necessary degree of splitting into sub-selves that occupy specific roles in society, where we may necessarily become multiple types of people in multiple settings in a way that's understood and supported and protected by, say, the broader practices, whether they are the religious practices or the symbolic practices or the egosyntonic bringing together, rebinding practices, however you want to label them. The soldier who must do what the soldier must do, the surgeon who must do what the surgeon must do, the people that make the very difficult and painful decisions from a informed and, say, impersonal perspective for the other members of the society who are not given that sanction to take on that role. So there is a basis from which I think we can proceed when we're discussing the idea of ecology, which is a good idea, and it is a multiple stands on multiple supports. But there's one place that we can begin to operate from.